This is the second video slide lecture for WCT 1 LA 200 for the fall semester. The chapter that we're reading for this part of the course is called The Ancient Near East, Peoples and Empires. It's important to understand the powerful empires of that period, particularly the Assyrian Empire, which conquered the Jewish people, the ancient Hebrews, and the Persian Empire, which had amazing accomplishments, spread over a tremendous amount of territory, and almost conquered Greece and moved into Eastern Central Europe. But instead, this lecture is not going to focus on empires per se, but on what I think is really more important than those developments, and that is the development of a new moral tradition, one which was looking out for people beyond your immediate family and your own tribe, thinking about the common humanity of all individuals under God. So the development of monotheism and the application of laws that applied fairly universally under that monotheism, and a new compassion for people who are not of your own tribal grouping, is what comes out of this Hebrew tradition and makes the Western tradition something quite unique. The ancient Hebrews have given us the Bible. For Christians, what we call the Old Testament can also be called the Hebrew Scriptures, because these are collections, books of stories that have been passed down from the Hebrew tribes of the ancient Near East. The first 5 books of the Christian Bible, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, and Deuteronomy, comprise what is also called the Pentateuch. And the Pentateuch comprises the Torah, the scrolls that are brought out during the Shabbat service in Hebrew temples yet today, that contain the text on scrolls of these first 5 books of the Bible. The Hebrew religion begins with Abraham, who was given a covenant by God. The essence of this covenant was that God would make Abraham, even though he was an old man at the time, the founder of a great nation, and that God would bless everyone who blessed Abraham and curse his enemies, those that cursed him. God promised to give Abraham's descendants all the land from Egypt to the Euphrates, which is known as the Promised Land, or the land of Israel. The country of Israel is actually much smaller than the lands promised in what is called the Abrahamic covenant, because that would also include parts of Saudi Arabia, Yemen, Oman, Turkey, Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Jordan, Kuwait, and the United Arab Emirates. God promised to give Abraham many children, many descendants, and he also stipulated that the men must be circumcised, which would be the permanent sign of this covenant with Abraham. The story of the covenant with the Hebrew people is told in the book of Genesis. That book also has creation stories, 2 versions of the creation story, the well-known story of Noah and the ark, and more. The next book of the Bible, Exodus, is the story of Moses, the next great leader of the Hebrew people, who several hundred years after Abraham, after the Hebrew people had been taken captive into Egypt, how Moses gathered them together and led them to revolt against control by the Pharaoh and out of Egypt and into the Promised Land. According to the story of Exodus, Moses gathered the Hebrew slaves and led them out of Egypt. They were pursued by the Pharaoh's troops, and to escape them, he parted the waters of the Red Sea. The Hebrews went safely across, but when Pharaoh's soldiers tried to follow, the sea came back and drowned them. Once in the desert of the Sinai Peninsula, the Hebrews were destined to wander for 40 years before they could enter the Promised Land. During that time, Moses climbed Mount Sinai and received the tables of the law, the Ten Commandments, directly from God. According to the Bible, there was a period several hundred years after Moses when the Hebrew people experienced a powerful united kingdom under three important kings, Saul, David, and Solomon. It was during the reign of Saul that the Philistines were on the verge of defeating the Hebrews, and at that time the young shepherd boy David was selected to fight the Philistine champion, the 9-foot-tall warrior named Goliath, and in that contest David killed him by hitting him in the center of the forehead with a stone from his slingshot. This foreshadowed his eventually becoming the next king for the Hebrew people. King David united Israelites, defeated the Philistines, and established a powerful kingdom. He's been memorialized by many pieces of artwork over the centuries. For example, at the left of this image is a photograph of Michelangelo's huge statue of David, made of one block of Carrara marble that stands in Florence still today. At the right is a different image. This shows Bathsheba, the wife of Uriah, in her bath with David in the upper left, looking on. He became so enamored of Bathsheba that he had an adulterous affair with her and arranged to have her husband killed by having him placed in the front lines of the military in an attack where he was most likely to die. David was succeeded by his son Solomon, who was known as a very wise king. Solomon built the large temple in Jerusalem, which became the religious, cultural, and symbolic center of the Hebrew people. This painting, called The Judgment of Solomon, was painted by the Renaissance artist Raphael in the 1500s. It illustrates the Bible story where two women claimed to be the mother of a baby, and neither would relinquish their claim. Taken to Solomon for a resolution of the dispute, Solomon proposed cutting the child in half and giving half to each woman. The woman who relinquished her claim to the child in order to spare its life was then recognized by Solomon as a true mother and was given the unharmed child. After the death of Solomon, the northern tribes and the southern tribes of Israel quarreled and split into two separate kingdoms. The kingdom of Israel to the north, shown in this image in the orange, and the kingdom of Judah to the south, shown in pink. Right along the strip of the Mediterranean Sea in green is the kingdom of the Philistines. The Palestinians of today derive their name from the Philistines. To the north is the kingdom of the Phoenicians in purple. There's an old saying called divide and conquer, which means it's easier to defeat an enemy if you can divide him into smaller groupings. That's apparently what happened to the Israelites, who divided into the kingdom of Israel and Judah. In 722 BC, the Assyrians conquered the Israelites of the 10 northern tribes and deported them to other parts of their empire. Integrated with neighboring peoples, then, the lost tribes of Israel lost their identity and disappeared forever. This is an image of the Israelites paying tribute to the Assyrians. According to the scholarship, this is Jehu, king of Israel, paying tribute to the king of Syria. Here is another similar image. In this, the Syrian soldier guarding these captives. The soldier is in the center of the image holding a spear, and the Hebrews in the picture are paying tribute, bringing goods to give to the Assyrians in tribute, recognizing and acknowledging their defeat and their dependence on their Assyrian masters. The southern tribes of Judah retained their independence for another nearly 140 years. But as the Assyrian power declines, power of a Mesopotamian people known as the Chaldeans rose, and in 586 BC, the Chaldeans defeated the Assyrians and also defeated the kingdom of Judah. The Chaldeans required many of the defeated Hebrews to return to Babylon, their capital, and they were held there for roughly 50 years, a period of time known as the Babylonian captivity. Around 439 BC, Chaldean king Belshazzar was having a feast and profaned holy goblets taken from Solomon's temple when the Chaldeans sacked Jerusalem. He used these goblets to toast the gods of gold and silver, thus a profanity to the one God. After making this toast, a disembodied hand appeared and wrote on the wall a prophecy that his kingdom will fall. Shortly thereafter, the Persians attacked and the Chaldeans were defeated. This is an image painted by Rembrandt in the 1600s, showing the writing on the wall at this feast by King Belshazzar. This is one of those interesting and often discussed stories of the Bible that led to the creation of the saying, "He's seen the writing on the wall," meaning that something is about to end, that you're probably going to lose. After the Persians defeated the Chaldeans, they allowed the Hebrews to return to their home in Judah. Then, in the following century, in the late 300s, Alexander the Great conquered all of the ancient Near East, including the Persians, including North Africa, all the way down to India, including the Hebrews. But the people of Judah survive. Now they're called Jews, and the religion is called Judaism, the religion of the one God, Yahweh. This slide offers a chronology of the events I have been speaking about in the last few minutes. Next, I want to turn to what I think is culturally important contributions of Hebrew life and culture to the Western cultural tradition. First, let's note that the Hebrews were people of law. Early in the history of the people of the covenant, Moses went on Mount Sinai and received the tablets with the law. These laws are in very general form, and they were elaborated with a number of specific provisions for Jewish life. For example, look at the fourth commandment, which reads, "Remember the Sabbath day and keep it holy." For Orthodox Jews, this means beginning to worship the Sabbath on sundown of the day before and continuing to respect the Sabbath until sundown of the Sabbath day, the seventh day of the week, which is Saturday, and Sunday is the first day of the week. Jewish laws are very specific about a number of other things. For example, there are strict dietary laws. Orthodox dietary law, or kosher law, proscribes eating certain animals. Pork, for example, you cannot eat the meat of pigs, nor can you eat rabbits nor camels. Only animals that have a cloven hoof, that is, mammals, that have a cloven hoof and chew their cud, especially cattle and sheep and goats, but also deer and bison. And also, when these animals are slaughtered, they must be killed in accordance to Jewish law, and a rabbi needs to be supervised to make sure that that happens. According to Jewish law, one may eat seafood as long as it is fish that has fins and scales. So shellfish, lobsters, and shrimp, as well as clams and so on, may not be eaten because they have no fins nor scales. In addition to laws which protect and limit behavior of Jewish people, there are many spiritual dimensions to the Hebrew tradition that have contributed very substantially to the Western cultural tradition. This can be seen in the prophetic tradition. I'm going to look at the prophets Isaiah and Amos to give you an example. The Jews were warned that they really could not mix with other people because they had to strictly follow the law. And it's hard to do that when you're with people who have very different dietary practices and so on. But the one God, the one universal God who created the earth for everybody and everybody in it, leads to a sense of universalism, that is, we are all the children of God, and that we must respect one another as fellow children of God. And this also has led to concerns for social justice. So a kind of abstract concern for the well-being of people who are not just in our own tribe appears with Hebrew monotheism. An example of the concern for social justice comes from this passage from Isaiah chapter 2. This is a passage that we read in church during Advent in early December because it speaks to the desire for peace. Let me just quote this. You can read it on the slide, but I will read it. And many people shall go and say, Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of God of Jacob. And he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. And he shall judge among the nations, and he shall rebuke many people. And they shall beat their swords into plowshares, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. And a similar concern for social justice from the prophet Amos. Amos reveals how the Lord had told him that he was unhappy with how so many people in Israel were ignoring the poor and the needy. And he wrote it this way: I will spare them no longer. In that day, declares the sovereign Lord, the songs in the temple will turn to wailing. Hear this, you who trample the needy and do away with the poor of the land, and who say, When will the new moon be over that we may sell grain? And when will the Sabbath be ended that we may market wheat? And then skimp on the measure, boosting the price and cheating with dishonest scales, buying the poor with silver and the needy for a pair of sandals, selling even the sweepings with the wheat. Thus, the prophets are telling the Hebrew people, and now they're telling all people of the book, which includes Christians and Muslims, who accept these scriptures as important parts of their religious traditions. They are telling us that we must care not only for our own well-being, but for the well-being of all, and we must avoid doing harm to others. This concludes slide lecture number 2. In slide lecture 3, we will look at ancient Greek culture, which developed in a parallel way a similar tradition for abstract justice, which became an important element in the formation of the Western conscience. So that is coming up in slide lecture number 3.